Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Duffy, and welcome to another edition of 19 Newsmakers. This is a show where we are bringing people in who are really having the pulse of our city, of what's going on in our community, of what's happening in and around us, in to give us maybe a better direction, a better look at what's going on around us. And we're really pleased today to have Eric Chaffee, who is the Director of Compliance, Risk Management, and Financial Integrity Institute at Case Western Reserve University. And Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. The reason we have you here is because of what has become a major issue in professional sports in the NCAA, and that is gambling. And you're talking about financial integrity right in your title there. And so that makes you the perfect person to talk about this. Let's start with this, where this all started. And this was way back in May of 2018 when the Supreme Court struck down the Pro and Amateur Sports Protection Act that banned sports gambling by states other than Nevada. Did that change everything? Has that brought us to where we are now?
It really did. But I mean, it was part of a trend, meaning that, generally at the beginning of this century, what was going on was that there was prohibitions against gambling. You just didn't gamble because it was viewed as being morally reprehensible. It was viewed as being socially corrosive. And throughout most of the 20th century, the line was held. But you have this act, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, that was put forward by Bill Bradley, famous athlete, played for the Knicks, but also a senator. And what it did was say that states could not, in fact, repeal their laws or change their laws related to sports gambling to, prevent sports gambling from being adopted in a lot of other jurisdictions. Well, 2018, after a whole lot of litigation, because New Jersey, specifically Atlantic City, wanted sports books, you have the Supreme Court coming together in a 6-3 decision in Murray v. NCC and saying, NCAA, basically that this violates the Constitution. It violates the anti-commandeering clause. Part of it is just generally the court becoming more conservative and more federalist, but the result is that ultimately what it does is it says that states get to regulate. Mm-hmm. Could the federal government step back in? Maybe. Under the commerce power, they might have the ability to do that. But we've really not seen that appetite to have that same type of sweeping regulation that was this particular act.
So basically what this did was allow the states to make their own decisions on sports gambling, which the professional leagues and the NCAA fought back against vehemently. I imagine they spent millions and millions of dollars lobbying the legislatures in all of these states to stay away from this. That didn't work, did it?
Yeah, I mean, remarkably enough, all the sports leagues came together and said, we don't want this. And the NCAA had said the same thing. We think that this is going to be a corrupting force. We think that, this is going to have bad results. And they fought this. I mean, they fought very much throughout the entire period prior to the Murray v. NCAA opinion, saying, we don't want this. We do not want to see this. It was a very, very strong response to the idea that we should even have sports books even in Atlantic City.
Yeah. When Bill Bradley helped write that legislation, the word in there that jumps out at me is protection. Protection for the leagues, protection for the NCAA, protection for, maybe he even was calling into effect protection for individuals who don't need to get involved in this because it could trigger some type of gambling addiction. I don't know, that's just me speculating. But the leagues were against this because of what they felt was going to jeopardize the integrity of the game. Was that, as far as you know, that was the impetus for their pushback against this?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there was concern on Senator Bradley's part about the effects of gambling, the corrosive effects that it can have from a societal standpoint. But even beyond the game itself, he was very much concerned about players. I mean, he had played at Princeton, mm-hmm. He had played for the New York Knicks, and he knew that gambling. And it was illegal then, and could in fact impact sports in very negative ways, hurt athletes, hurt players, hurt the sport. All of those things were things that led to the passage of that particular law.
And there's a couple reasons for that, and I want to talk about them. Number one, from an integrity standpoint, just from the professional teams and the college teams, is as soon as people don't believe that they are seeing what they are seeing, as soon as they start having conspiracy theories about what's going on, and how did my team lose this game, and why did that official make this call, and how did that ending of this game happen, you've lost it. You've lost your league, quite honestly, correct? And that was why the Protection Act was in place in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, there's some magic that goes on when you go over to Progressive Field or you go see the Browns play, that you feel like you're seeing a real athletic contest. And even if there's big money in terms of what players are being paid, you still feel like they really care about what the outcome of the game is. The risk is when you start having money interfere in regard to gambling, that you're going to see altered outcomes, you're going to see all sorts of things going on that you really don't want to see happening in the background of a sporting event, of something that's supposed to be a real contest.
Right, and I think once you lose that, and I think that's why these leagues came down so hard on the Black Sox, Pete Rose. There were huge implications for anybody involved in gambling, and that's why, correct?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, when you think about Pete Rose, I mean, really a lot of that was animated by the fact that simply he bet on the Reds. That was what was being asserted, or at least what was being suggested. Not even real fixing or anything that, he in any way, got in the way of the result of the game. It's one of those things where the specter of impropriety really can damage things, even if there's no impropriety, there's no wrongdoing underlying it.
Yeah, the specter of it in and of itself can do that. Yeah. Well, our guest is Eric Chaffee. He is the Director of Compliance, Risk Management, and Financial Integrity, the Institute there at Case Western Reserve. A fascinating conversation so far. We're going to get into probably the key element of all of this, of what really is at the heart of this, and that's information sharing and how dangerous that can be for the NCAA and for these professional sports leagues. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
True crime lives here. Watch Dark Side of the Land on 19 News Plus.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Duffy. Welcome back to this edition of Newsmakers, where our guest is Eric Chaffee, the Director of the Compliance, Risk Management, and Financial Integrity Institute, which makes him the perfect gentleman to be here with us today as we talk about gambling in the NCAA and in professional sports. And we want to get into what the real deal is here. When you get to the bottom line of all of this, is gamblers want inside information. They want people who are maybe going to fix things, like Emmanuel Clase has been accused of doing when he was pitching for the Guardians. But information sharing is at the heart of this, is the threat there for the NCAA and professional sports, correct? And tell me why.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, part of it is as well, okay, you find out that there's shaving points, for example. And we've had a scandal about that recently in terms of the NCAA. And as a result of knowing about that, fixing that gives you an advantage when you're betting. It allows you to make a lot of money. But, frankly, I mean, there are concerns about just information about who's sick, who may not play, all of those things as well. So, a lot about this is thinking about information, how it's shared, who should have access, and how you make a system of betting fair. And if you're going to have a system of betting surrounding this, a system of gaming, of gambling, ultimately, how you maintain the integrity of the sport itself.
Yeah, and then it's the people involved with trying to get that information. They are very good at finding out who may be susceptible to this, and then they prey on that.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, meaning that, for example, with the point shaving scandal that you saw in the NCAA, at least part of that was finding players who really were not getting the NIL money, the name, image, likeness money, the same way that other players were, and then preying on them Beyond that, I mean, athletes are people, especially the young athletes in college, and these types of scandals are not new. I mean, you have Tattoo-gate, for example,
Right.
with Ohio State a few years ago.
Which seems quaint at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, they actually overturned that
Right.
with the NIL money coming in. So.
Yeah, so at this point now, when we look at this, what's the biggest danger? Is the information sharing a bigger danger than finding, and I mentioned the Emmanuel Clase case, somebody who's not necessarily sharing information? Allegedly, he's throwing the game, literally throwing the game. What's more dangerous?
That's a good question. I mean, it's one of those things where, the fixing, the interference, the improper access to information, it's all corrosive. And it's one of those things where, a few scandals may not cause people to lose faith in sports. But the more and more this happens, the more you sort of, poke those Jenga pieces out of the puzzle. What you're going to see is people are going to question more and more whether or not they ought to be spending their time thinking about their dollars on professional sports or NCAA sports.
Yeah. Well, it is fascinating, and there's two main questions left that we have to ask. Why did these leagues decide to embrace this, which they have? And can they maintain their integrity? Can they maintain that moving forward? We're going to ask those questions on Newsmakers when we get back.
First Alert traffic and weather together all morning long. Stream 19 News this morning on 19 News Plus.
Hi, everybody. Brian Duffy back with you on another edition of 19 Newsmakers. It's our digital show podcast where we bring people in from the community who have expert opinions, expert knowledge about what's going on in and around Northeast Ohio and in the world. Our guest is Eric Chaffee, who's the director of the Compliance, Risk Management, and Financial Integrity Institute at Case Western Reserve University. Eric, thank you for being here. Excuse me. We want to talk about this gambling issue, which has become just enormous in our world and in the leagues. And we've gotten to the point now where we know the hows and the whys and the concerns about this. But for professional sports leagues, for the NCAA, they made this turn very, very quickly. Was it simply, and a lot of people are saying it's simple greed. They wanted to get in on it. They wanted to get in with these online betting franchises so they could make more money. Is it that simple? Is that the reason why they did it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, you have to remember, despite the fact that we think of these as athletic contests and maybe something different, that sports, they're big business, and that includes even for the NCAA. And as a result, when you have for-profit entities that are supposed to seek profit, it's not surprising when they see a big monetary prize that they're going to go after it. And it's one of those things where, the future is hard to predict, and there are questions about the integrity of the sport and maintaining the viability of the sports business. It was one of those things that, if you can't beat them, join them, meaning that, there are a lot of partnerships that were formed here almost immediately once it became clear that the states were going to be able to regulate this how they want. And there is something about the transparency here that is to be liked by the industry, meaning that, rather than having to worry about, some back alley sports book, essentially, you have everything out in the open. You have the state providing regulation. You have the state providing monitoring itself or engaging monitors. And as a result of that, despite the fact that there are real meaningful concerns about what the future of this is and what it holds, whether or not there'll be more scandals, at least we're getting data on it. We're seeing it out in the open rather than trying to guess about what's going on, in some back alley somewhere.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be a question. Everyone's just going to say it's greed, but that is a key element to this. Let's kind of bring our enemy into the fold here. Not to say that enemy is probably the wrong word, but if we've got better control, maybe we can keep a lid on this from the standpoint of keeping the integrity of our sport. Do you think it was that or the revenue, or is that just an impossible question to answer?
I think probably the revenue was the leading thing because, I mean, it's an entertainment business, so you're providing entertainment, and if part of that entertainment is betting, if you can figure out how to do it in a reasonable, rational way that, you limit the bad results from it, it's wonderful. But, it is one of those things where sports betting, sports scandals, there's a history of this, and a lot of it, it was hard to detect and hard to realize what was going on. So, having all of this out in the open, it does make it easier to figure out if something goes wrong, but that may ultimately end up threatening the integrity of the sports involved here.
It's really difficult process, isn't it? So you're the director of compliance, risk management, and financial integrity. You're an attorney, a lawyer. If you were advising these professional sports leagues, and they were, because they sat around in big offices making these decisions, would you have told them to do this, or would you have said, it's better for us that we sit on the sidelines of this and stay away? They couldn't stop the sports books in their states. We know that. But their affiliation, the Guardians and the Cavs were playing on FanDuel TV. Would you have told them this is a bad idea? And I'm putting you on the spot.
That's
I know.
the multi-billion-dollar question.
Right.
You can't eliminate risk in life.
Right.
And as a result of that, there's money to be made with these affiliations. The floodgates had been open with that 2018 decision that we talked about. What I would have done would have been to advise my clients that, okay, you're not going to be able to stop sports betting. It's going to be regulated based on the individual states. And you have to make a choice about how closely you're going to be affiliated with the sports books. And maybe everything will go right, or maybe there'll only be some minor bumps in the road. But if something goes horribly wrong, that is a risk, and you have to be aware of that. You're going to have to make a choice as to whether or not, how well do you want to sleep at night?
Yeah. They not only did they make a choice to go, to have an affiliation, they went all in. I mean, this was not, putting a toe in the water here. They went all in, didn't they?
Yeah.
They made a big move.
I mean, it's very different to watch sports today than it was 20, 30 years ago. There is very much an acceptance that gambling is going to be involved, and in fact, things like odds discussed by newscasters and all of those things. It's a bet, and
Very good.
It's kind of a funny way to put it, but I think that's exactly right. I mean, they've made a bet that they can control the monster, so to speak, and maybe they can, maybe they can't.
Yeah. So can they do it? Can they maintain their integrity? Are they a major betting scandal away from just ruining the golden goose, so to speak? I mean, these leagues make so much money, the NFL in particular. I mean, my gosh, if they get a major betting scandal, can they recover?
That's a great question. I mean, people still watch pro wrestling, even though they, and spoiler alert here, they know it's fixed. But, it is one of those things where major scandals really would be a problem. A major scandal really would be a problem. There are controls in place. A lot of them relate to detection, but you want to head these things off before they happen. Mm-hmm. And there's counseling of players, and there's all sorts of other things that are done to basically take care of things before the scandals happen. But I don't know. I mean, with Class A and Ortez and the other people who are now under investigation for this, or in some instances have been convicted, I don't know. There's reason for, as a fan who likes a nice, clean game, to be worried here. And there's reason for the leagues to be investing and figuring out, and the NCAA to be figuring out what else can be done to keep this as safe as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate your expertise today, because this is a conversation a lot of people are having. I know people look back, Guardians fans look back to the 2024 American League Championship Series with Class A against the Yankees, and I know that none of those pitches were involved in what he's accused of doing, but some people are convinced, absolutely convinced, that something shady was going on down there. Not that we are not alleging that. at all. Eric, I really appreciate you having you here. I mentioned when we started that we had a lot to talk about. I don't know that we got through everything that I could ask you, so I know you'd be interested in coming back, and we may have you again soon. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. All right, thank you for watching another edition of 19 Newsmakers. Hope you enjoyed today's program. Fascinating, I thought it was. I hope you agree, and we'll see you again soon. We stream every Monday at 6:30, right after our newscast at 6 o'clock, and of course, these all remain available on our website as a streaming show and, of course, as a podcast. Thank you so much for watching.